The film opens with a man who is running through the woods. Ultimately, he comes across a building that is seemingly destroyed and abandoned. The scene then changes, and now we see an ambitious man named Kiwi Kai, who has a dream of becoming a popular author and writer. While clearly struggling with his life, he narrates that he is unemployed and lives in his own house, which means everything. He claims that he has not written anything in a while and is struggling with his new book, which will be a bunch of short horror stories. But he is unable to write anything, and we clearly see that he is distressed because of this. He also adds that he does not have to prove anything to anyone and wants to see this as an opportunity to change his life. The next day, he wakes up tired as usual but finds his entire house shaking, and he senses that something is happening in the room right next to him. He goes there to check it out and finds a man named Jilin, who is breaking a wall while playing loud classical music. Enraged by his actions, Kai shuts off the music and asks Jilin why he is breaking the wall between the rooms. Calmly, Jilin replies that he is breaking the wall so the two rooms can unite and be one because the separation makes him uncomfortable. As Kai points out that breaking the wall will bring down the ceiling as well, Jilin claims that he will break the wall and find out. Kai presumes that the real estate company sent Jilin just to annoy him so he can leave this place because they have tried everything else. With pure fortitude, he announces that this house is everything he has in life and he will never leave it, no matter how hard someone tries. Fuming, Kai storms back into his room and puts on music so he can cancel out the noise and tries to type again. Once Jilin stops and takes a rest, Kai takes off his headphones and tries to write something down, but is unable to come up with a single word. Just then, while completely violating his privacy, Jilin enters his room and sees that Kai is trying to write a horror story. As Kai gets up and goes away, Jilin sits in his place and claims that he wants to give it a shot since he used to be a writer when he was young. While feeling a little interested in Jilin, Kai explains that his novel will be called The Novel of Horror, and that he has all of the short stories in his head, but he needs to start to write all of them down. Jilin sits down again and begins to type, while Kai sits by and watches him, and we see what the story is about. We see a man named Greg and a woman named Lisa who are a happily married couple. Greg is working on robots that resemble humans and he wants them to be as realistic as possible, with human emotions. While Lisa appreciates his work, she also wants him to stay in touch with reality and spend more time with her, while building a family. While expressing his love, Greg explains that all he wants to do is start a family with her. At night, both of them are sleeping when Lisa gets a striking pain in her stomach that leads Greg to take her to the hospital. As Greg is extremely concerned and stunned, she gets taken to the emergency ward. Later on, it is revealed that Greg is an electrician who works at a regular hospital. He is approached by a man who has a deceased body and claims that he has to take it upstairs. Greg is currently fixing the elevators, so he decides to help and take the man on the upper floor as he talks about how the person passed away. That same man is later seen having a nightmare similar to the movie he was watching, in which gallons of blood flood the room. When he wakes, he hears some peculiar noises and moves to investigate. After seeing some blood stains, he sees something that shocks him to his core and the scene changes. We now see an elderly woman named Katie, who is presumably Lisa's mother, and she is here to check on Greg since Lisa is sick. She comes inside and notices that Greg does not seem worried about this situation. As she is talking to him, her dog starts to bark outside, so Greg goes out to check on the dog. The dog is seen barking at a pipe from where blood is leaking, so Greg picks up the dog and brings it inside. While Katie is in the kitchen, she shockingly finds a realistic doll in the closet and gets petrified. Greg comes in and explains that he bought that as a gift for the baby, which reveals that Lisa is pregnant. Katie is a little less freaked out after hearing this news, but that is snatched away when she goes to the toilet and finds a leech on her leg. She starts screaming again and Greg walks in, only to explain that it is just a bug and that Katie should not worry about it. But as they leave the bathroom, we see more leeches on the floor, which indicates that something is not right here. Greg instantly tells Katie to leave now, and almost pushes her out of the house as she is still confused as to why all this just happened to her. While Greg is at the hospital, he meets the same man again who is leaving the hospital. Upon being asked, he claims that Greg is his friend, which is why he strongly advises that Greg should also leave the hospital forever. He explains how he had a nightmare and then saw something evil afterward. Then he also reveals that the deceased body he brought in is missing. Meanwhile, Katie takes her dog to the vet because she found the dog bruised. The vet tells Katie that the dog was bit by a leech, which is the same thing that bit Katie earlier in the bathroom. This makes her very curious, so she goes back to Greg's house and steps inside without Greg knowing. She makes her way down to Greg's laboratory, where she starts looking for him, but she instead finds the body of Lisa, who has passed away. Suddenly, Greg appears with a menacing face and claims that everything will be alright because he will fix everything. Lisa has clearly passed away and she has leeches all over her body, which are helping to regulate the blood in her cadaver. Petrified, Katie witnesses that Greg turns on some switches and electrocutes Lisa in order to wake her up. But of course, it does not work and Greg is heartbroken by this. After crying for a moment, Greg starts to menacingly smile again as he tells Katie that he will try again, which results in her running away from there. Greg follows with an axe as she locks herself inside her room, but that does not stop him. He breaks in and ends Katie's life with his axe. The scene now changes back to Kai, which means that the short story ended there. He now wakes up in his house, where he realizes that Jillian is with a woman and that he has written a story. Just then, Kai gets a call from the senior editor at the Evergreen Press named Yan Hu. Yan Hu tells Kai that he got an email from Kai with a short story, and they like it. He informs Kai that they will publish the story and wants Kai to write more short stories for this novel. During this, Jillian comes out after he is finished with the woman and hears that they like the story. Kai thanks them and ends the call while being a little mad at Jillian for sending the email without his consent. After this, Jillian explains that Kai does not need him anymore since he got the start he wanted, and leaves. In the morning, Kai wakes up only to see that the girl who was with Jillian last night is still there. Her name is Faye, and before she can do anything, Kai tells her to skedaddle immediately. Shortly after, he gets curious about Jillian, so he finds his record and discovers that he was indeed a writer who mysteriously disappeared a few years back. As he is intriguingly reading more about Jillian, he walks inside the room with a sledgehammer and corners Kai, who pulls out a knife in self-defense and cuts him on his head. However, Jillian overpowers him and charges him with his hammer. Suddenly, Kai finds himself in a room where he sees a little kid getting. The scene then changes to presumably the second story in the horror novel, where we see a woman dancing. After she finishes dancing, we get introduced to an elderly couple named Liang and Fen. As they are in their house, the power gets cut, and a little concerned, Liang goes to Fen and starts lighting some candle. While being completely silent, Fen is looking at some pictures of deceased loved ones, and Liang notices that she is distressed by this. The scene now changes and we see a woman named Xiao Yu getting ready for her dance. As she is performing the dance in front of an audience, a little girl who is practicing being a dancer is watching her as she is amazed by this performance. After the show ends, the girl approaches Xiao Yu. While trying to express how fascinating she finds this show, the girl discovers that Xiao Yu is a very rude person because of how popular and valued she is. After this encounter, wanting to be just like Xiao Yu, the girl is practicing all alone in a room when a teacher walks in and helps her out. The teacher is very nice towards the girl, and she is finally happy that someone is keen on trying to teach her how to dance. We now move back to Liang and Fen, where Liang is with a friend and Fen is walking around the house while acting a little strange. Doubtful of this behavior, the friend suspects that there might be a ghost in her, but Liang thinks that his friend is talking nonsense. Still concerned, Liang follows Fen inside a room, where he finds her sitting in front of a mirror, where she is again staring at a picture of a dancing woman that is presumably Xiao Yu. Meanwhile, the teacher is on his way to see Xiao Yu, who is preparing for another show. She makes the teacher eat some food as she gets ready for her show, and it is clear that the two are a bit close. Wanting to confront Xiao Yu on why she was rude to her, the girl barges inside her room and sees that she is kissing the teacher. The scene now changes back and it is revealed that the girl is Fen, and Liang is the teacher who eventually married Fen. She smiles and tells Liang how grateful she is for spending her life with Liang and getting her dream role. Then, it is revealed how Fen got the role. Back in the past, Xiao Yu found out that there were rumors going on about her, about how she did unspeakable things to get her role. Then, we see Liang with an administrator named Wang, and as they are discussing the rumors, he tells Liang that this situation is very bad for Xiao Yu. Meanwhile, Xiao Yu is enraged, and she barges inside the room to prove her innocence. Liang knows that she is in fact innocent, and has been working hard since she was 6 years old to get to this point. However, fearing that Xiao Yu will ruin the image of their show, Wang decides not to cast her in the next show and tells Liang to bring in Fen for the next show instead. Xiao Yu is still trying to argue against this, but Liang makes it clear that there is nothing that she can do. Back to the current Liang, we see that he wakes up late at night, only to see that Fen is missing. Concerned, he goes out to investigate and hears someone singing and dancing just like Xiao Yu once did. When he goes further, he finds the dancing woman staring right at him. He gets scared and runs away, hoping that all of this is just his imagination. The next day, he visits Fen in a hospital and starts talking to her, as she reveals that it was all her fault. Fen says that she was the one who spread the rumor about Xiao Yu because she envied everything she had, including Liang. The night Liang was feeling miserable for not being able to do anything for Xiao Yu, he came to Fen while being drunk, and she comforted him while also falling in love. Feeling the burden and guilt of doing this to Xiao Yu, Liang gets extremely distressed and heads back home, where he is shocked to see the dancing lady he saw before. He is then taken aback to learn that it is none other than Xiao Yu, who knows what Liang did. Liang starts to apologize for the betrayal, and explains that he is also crushed by this incident and feels very guilty. Just then, he wakes up in his bed, realizing that all of this has just been a long and twisting nightmare. He then gets a call from the hospital and they inform him that there is an emergency, which is why Liang has to go there. Liang walks outside and sees Xiao Yu's dress hanging outside on a tree. He feels petrified, believing he has lost everything in his life at this point. Kai now wakes up in his room as this second short story has also ended. He now notices that Jillian is still there, and that he is destroying the entire apartment. He tries to stop him, but Jillian clearly overpowers him and laughs at Kai's pathetic attempts at trying to fight back. Then, he stops for a while and shows him a truck outside the house that is about to destroy the whole building. After seeing the truck, Kai also realizes that he cannot stop the inevitable. Kai gets a little mad at all of this and calls Jillian crazy, but this makes Jillian angry too. Suddenly, something snaps inside of him, and he starts to destroy everything even more vigorously, which indicates that people in his past have also accused him of being crazy. As he keeps destroying the apartment, Kai grabs a few things and runs for his life. While Kai is leaving in his car, Yan Hu, a senior at the Evergreen Press, calls him to meet in person because they also like the second part of the story. After hearing the call, Kai discovers that there is a second story and he assumes that Jilin wrote it, so he decides to go and tell Yan that he has not written the stories. When he meets Yan, he explains that this novel can go big time, but Kai stops him and explains that the crazy psychopath has written the stories. He also mentions that he used to be a writer, which is why his stories were good, suggesting that the Evergreen Press hire him instead. He then sees that Jilin has followed him there as well, so he leaves Yan and goes towards him, but he somehow gets lost and makes his way to a bedroom and falls asleep. He wakes up in the morning where he finds Faye trying to make love to him. It all seems normal, until Faye pulls out a knife and states that she wants to end the life of Kai, forcing him to get scared and run away as she chases him. As he is running away, he stops for a brief moment when Lisa and Xiao Yu come close to him, forcing a petrified Kai to flee for his life. He escapes the building, gets in his car, and starts to drive. As he is nervously driving, Jilin appears right in front of him while sitting in another car, and Kai gets into a car crash. We now get into the third story, where we see a young girl named Ming drowning in water but waking up in her bed as if it was just her dream. Her mother wakes her up and after a while, they sit down and start talking while having breakfast. From their discussion, it is revealed that her dad is not with them, and he lives separately with his new girlfriend. At night, she puts her to bed after giving her a bath. While sleeping, Ming again starts to dream as a layer of water comes down from the ceiling, and she gets transported to the middle of the ocean where she keeps swimming. Then, a woman comes inside the house. This is Ming's father's girlfriend, and she keeps looking around the house for Ming. Meanwhile, Ming's dream turns into a nightmare as she sits on her bed, and some hair begins to surround her from everywhere. She gets suffocated by the hair. And when the girlfriend walks inside her room, she sees that Ming is sitting on her bed while looking like something is choking her. Concerned by this, Ming's father takes this matter to a professional doctor, explaining the girl's situation. It is revealed that Ming's mother had passed away, and she has been imagining her, which causes her to have nightmares. The doctor also explains that her mother's tragic passing must have involved her hair, which is why Ming keeps seeing hair and sometimes feels like getting choked by them. After this, we are shown how it all started, with Ming and her mother playing on a beach. While playing, her mother sits down for a moment and starts to read a book, while Ming insists on playing hide and seek. She asks her mother to count to 5 while she goes and hides somewhere. She agrees, putting her book in front of her face and counting to 5, while Ming goes and stands on a boat. After counting and looking around, she realizes that Ming is missing. After thoroughly looking everywhere, she believes that Ming fell into the water, so she bravely jumps in to save her. When she finds Ming near a net, she grabs and pushes her toward the surface, but her hair gets caught in the net. Confused by the memories, her mother's hair is the last thing Ming sees as she resurfaces, and this is when her mother passes away. Eventually, she became delusional, thinking that nothing happened to her mother, imagining that she is still with her. The third story ends as Kai now wakes up in a hospital with bandages on his head. Yan Hu walks in and reveals that Kai has been in this hospital for the past 3 days, and that he also wrote a third chapter. Surprisingly, Kai has no memory of this and strongly claims that he remembers nothing that happened to him after the accident. Yan emphasizes how Kai needs to keep writing the novel, because the story was also very well liked. But Kai refuses and says that he does not remember writing, and does not want to continue writing any of it. Yan gets confused by his remarks, so he thinks it is best to give him some space, so he leaves the room. Kai then realizes that he needs some answers, so he runs from the hospital in order to find Jilin. He eventually finds Jilin, who does not reveal anything and starts to run away. Now, Kai has no other option but to run after him. But as they are running, Jilin runs through a black and white forest and goes towards the abandoned building. It is a representation of Kai's mind, meaning that Jilin has always been inside his head. While running, Kai reaches an asylum, where he sees Greg from the first story, Liang from the second story, and even Ming from the third story. This means that all of this has been inside his head all along. And while grasping this reality, Kai lies on a bed and sleeps. When he wakes up, he sees that Jilin is right by him in his room, and he just finished typing something. He again starts to ask questions, and Jilin explains that all of this has been inside his head. It is revealed that Kai has developed a multiple personality disorder as a coping mechanism for his melancholic solitude. He was all alone and never had a chance to socialize, never having any friends in his real life. He unintentionally and involuntarily made all these characters in his head. Kai refuses to believe this, but Jilin proves this when they sit down and have a proper conversation. Jilin explains that he is a part of Kai because at one point in his life, he became fat because he watched TV all day and ate too much food. Jilin represents that side of Kai, and all of the characters in his book also resemble him in his real life. Kai starts to remember, and claims that he wanted to write it all down, which is why he wanted to be a writer in the first place. He explains that he started to write and became very passionate about it. He got so hyper-fixated on writing that he barely ate and slept. This made him slim again, but his family thought that he was getting mentally ill, so they put him in an asylum. This is why he had seen all of these characters in the asylum before. So, once Kai was in the asylum, He started eating and sleeping more, which resulted in him getting fat again, meaning that his most persistent alter ego is the fat man, Jilin. Kai now raises a question and inquires how he got out of his head in the first place. Jilin explains that they can get out wherever they want and only Kai can see them, but the main thing is that Kai needs to fix all of this. While explaining his purpose, Jilin says that he came here and destroyed his place just so Kai could start writing again and change his life, like he was supposed to. Now that Kai has started writing the book, Jilin can go to rest, and as he lies down, Kai goes to meet Yan-Hu again. Yan is talking to his boss as Kai waits inside his office. Once he is done talking, he walks inside his office and, not knowing that Kai is there, he starts to curse his boss. Meanwhile, Jilin and the rest are shown inside Kai's head, where all of them are inside an abandoned building. They all decide and encourage Jilin to leave the place by simply opening the doors and helping Kai in real life. Jilin runs away from that building, which is presumably how he got out.